Okay, today is Saturday, so me and Josh Scruggs, we're kind of playing around on the dyno with his daily driver tow truck. And this has a On3 Performance added turbo kit over a Taterbilt 6767, 100% over extra G injectors, and a 10 mil CP3 on an otherwise stock long block on a early 04 truck. So he's got ARP 2000s, and we know we're pushing the limits on that. He's pushed coolant a couple times, but so far it's hanging in there. Also, we went through the transmission, and it's like a street track setup. We started the dyno session, and we ended up getting 786 horsepower out of it. And so out of curiosity, we decided to take the airbox off. So as you can see over here, this is his airbox setup. And we pulled it off, and it picked up almost exactly 10 horsepower. It did it did 795 with the airbox off. And then after that, we decided to see what would happen, like basically the 795 it did with just pulling the air directly off the turbo right here. So we put this 3-foot pipe on here. So it's pulling cold air, and it gives it a direct channel of air. It creates a velocity going to the turbo, and it did 820 horsepower with just picking up that pipe. Obviously we can't run it like that, but that gives you an idea of when you see competition vehicles putting a velocity stack or a intake pipe on their turbo. I mean, that picked up 25 horsepower just putting that pipe on. So getting cold air to your turbo and getting a velocity flow directly to your turbo will gain horsepower. So here you can see the horsepower that we're making. This red line on the bottom was the first pull that we did, and the torque converter did not lock up because I had started the run too low, and it did 656 horsepower. That was full power, full fuel with no torque converter lockup. The very next run, the torque converter was locked, and it did 786, and that's the orange line. So you can see the difference of non-lockup versus lockup. That's what, probably 125 horsepower difference. And then the purple line is a 795. That was with no airbox. And then the black line was 820 horsepower. There you can see the difference of horsepowers for each one. Altogether, I just thought it was pretty interesting that it gets that much difference of horsepower getting air directly to your turbo. So hopefully that's a tidbit of information you guys can use as you're building your trucks. If you have the ability to get a cold air intake on it, or you get a velocity stack on it, it does make a difference.
All right, gonna show you guys how to put the rivet nuts in for our rear drive shaft loop. So I cheated and I already have my holes drilled. I've got that side done. Thought I would show you on this side how to do it. Drill a 15-30 second hole. So first off, get your drive shaft loop up in there. Make sure you get good center punches and get your hole spacing just right, because if your holes aren't spaced right, you're gonna fight it. It's gonna be really annoying. So start with a small pilot bit and work your way up. Don't just try to put a big bit into it. You'll burn your bit up and you'll not be centered, and it'll be really frustrating again. So 15-30 second hole. Once you have it done, you're gonna put the rivet nut in. This is the rivet nut itself. This is the part that you will be installing. Pretty much it needs to go up through the frame, and then it's just like a rivet. It's gonna crimp down here on the bottom. It's gonna crimp down on the frame, and then it'll be in the frame and not supposed to spin, and you can tighten your bolt into it. So we are going to send this little gadget with all of them. I'm assuming most of you don't have the proper tool to put this in. This little bracket will keep it from spinning. Then it's just a bolt and a nut. So put your rivet nut on. Put your rivet nut on the bolt. Make sure you have threads sticking out of the end, or it will not, I don't know, pretty much doesn't have enough thread engagement to do the pulling that it needs to, and it'll distort it and you'll ruin it. So just get that up in there. Actually, yeah. You need to tap it up in there. Make sure it's seated all the way up in. Grab your wrenches. All right, when you put it up in there, make sure that this bracket is against the frame so that it doesn't want to spin. And then you just hold the bolt and start turning the nut. You're going to turn the nut approximately 2 full turns. Your frame thickness is going to vary that a little bit, but you can usually tell pretty easily when that is done crimping. You've got a good bit of resistance all along, but once you get it down to where it's done being crimped, it goes extra hard. You don't want to just keep forcing it until you strip threads out, so just get a good solid crimp on it. You can back the nut off once you feel you have a good crimp, and go ahead and back the bolt out. And there you have it. You can take a light and shine up in there. You can kind of see the area that is crimped. If it doesn't look like it's, you know, really finished crimping down, you can put your bolt back in and give it another turn or two. Rather do it in a couple of stages rather than, you know, over tightening it or something like that. But once you feel like your rivet nut is in properly, then you're just ready to put the loop on and throw your bolts in, and you should be good to go. Alright, for installing the loop itself, just drop down the back of your drive shaft, put the drive shaft loop over it. As you can see, the loop is off center, so you need to make sure that it is turned the right way. Your drive shaft is not centered in between your frame, so you'll discover pretty quickly if you have it on the wrong way. I'm just going to hang that there and put a And that includes the great installation of our fabulous rear drive shaft.
This is a 88 series tractor that Dad's had probably 10 years. It's a 5088. And last summer he had a hired hand that was running the tractor, and it blew a coolant hose, and it was in the dark, and they didn't catch it. It was overheating, and it ran too hot and developed a knock, so he had to tear it down and do an overhaul. This is something that he had a local service guy come out and tear it apart at his place or at the neighbor's farm, and the guy got sick and wasn't able to finish the project, and so it sat there, and he needs this tractor for planting. So I said, bring it over, let's put the thing back together. And so we had an overhaul kit and all the parts already here, but we had to clean everything up. And Cody actually has some experience with working on tractors because he worked at GMS before he worked here. So Cody actually helped put the sleeves and everything, put the engine back together. We got it fired, going to get this thing fired back up and put it back in service. And we figured while it's in the shop, we're going to clean up about 10 years worth of farmers wiring. I don't know if you are familiar with how some farmers get some things done, but we have learned that when it's go time, they don't necessarily always do the things the right way. So Dad's a little bit embarrassed about some of the wiring he's done, and I said, it's just going to stay in here until we get this right. We're going to fix the lights, and we're going to replace some of the interior pieces, fix the air conditioning, and get this thing ready for service.